Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 588, and today's date is February 10th, 2015, and the title of this episode is, Obama Wants Military Force Against the Islamic State, or is it really Syria? War is coming. Let's get into the economic collapse news. Now, we understand out in Europe, the Eurozone is basically crumbling and falling apart. We understand that all these countries have a huge amount of debt. And we understand Greece is the focal point at this point in time. And we see that the new government in Greece is pretty much holding their own right now. They are not bowing to the central bankers' needs, wants, proposals, and they are pushing back. And we see that right now the Commission in Europe is going to propose a 6-month extension for Greece. So by holding out and saying, no, we are not going to pay our debt, and with Europe saying, listen, we are going to give you an ultimatum, right now they decided that, maybe we should think about this. Because Greece is out there saying, listen, if we do not get the funds, we could turn to Russia, we could turn to China, or maybe even the U.S. We have a plan B, and we will go out there and find different funding. I don't think they'll actually turn toward the United States. I think they'll actually go for Russia or China. But we can see they are really pushing right now, and we can see right now that Europe seems like they're giving in. And we're going to have to continually watch this to see how this actually plays out as time goes on. And we realize that as they continually push back and forth, other countries are continually looking at this. Italy, Portugal, Spain, France. Because whatever happens here, and if there is a debt write-off, they're going to want the same exact thing. And this is what Europe is really afraid of. They're worried about this. The central bankers are nervous that other countries might say, wait a minute, we would like a debt write-off. And this might have a domino effect, which will bring this entire system crashing down. And everyone will blame the central bankers if this does occur. And this is why they're pushing war so hard. They're doing everything they possibly can to push war. Now, I'm not talking about the actual governments where they're looking at the situation in Europe and saying, you know something, we're getting a little too far ahead of ourselves right now. If there is war, it will be fought right here in our countries. Central bankers, of course, don't care. They have no allegiance. They have no allegiance to any government, to any people. Their allegiance is to debt, into controlling the people, into taking their wealth away, into going into countries and stealing their natural resources. That's it. That's what they look to do. And we can see as the economy continually falls apart, they're trying to prop it up and use whatever they possibly can to keep this collapse from coming. And people say, why would they want to keep the collapse from coming? Because they do not want to be blamed for this. They want this to be blamed on another country or group to cover the entire thing up. Because you have to remember, they would love to start this all over again. This is how the system works. Well, I should say their system. And we see here in the United States, they are having a tougher and tougher time in keeping this illusion alive. They're making it like everything is fine, but we know it's not. I mean, we look at inventory growth. It has stalled in December. Missing the expectations of 0.2%, it came in at 0.1%. And this came from a growth of 0.8% in November. December inventory sales ratio at 1.22, up from 1.16 in December, to the worst level since Lehman. If we build it or store it and have the inventory, we're hoping people will come and purchase it. Guess what? It is not happening. Their plan isn't working. They think people still have money. They think that, These people out there, they're just hiding it. They have jobs, they have money because they see the reports coming in and they're thinking that people have it hidden someplace. But no, the people are tapped out. There is no money. And of course, as they continually try to get more and more money out of the people, they have to go across into different countries using and creating different laws to allow them to take the money from those people. And one of those is FATCA, of course. Obamacare here in the United States is to bring in revenue to the U.S. government and to the insurance companies. And that is not working. So everything they're trying to do is actually backfiring because we are at the end game. And we can see this from the Small Business Association. It appears the engine of job growth in America is sputtering out as the NFIB Small Business Optimism dropped from 100.4 to 97.9. Of course, they thought this was going to go up to 101. This is the biggest miss since November 12th. The percentage of firms expected a better economy falling to 0%. Employers anticipating job creation drops to 14%. Well, of course, they're probably going to blame this all on the weather, because of the snow, the cold. But again, the weather doesn't affect the entire country. It only affects the small little portion of where it is happening. And if we break this down, we see that percentage of firms expecting a better economy falls to 0%. 0%. Firms anticipating higher selling prices falls to 3%. Firms seeing increased capital spending falls to 26%. Firms planning to boost inventory falls to 2%. Firms expecting better sales falls to 16%. Firms expecting positive earning trends falls to negative 19%. They're looking at the situation and they realize businesses are not doing well. They're not earning. And we can see that it is not getting better whatsoever. And we have the bankers out there. Now, of course, the central bank and, the banking analysis of like Bank of America, Wells Fargo, they all thought if they dropped the oil prices, people would have extra money. They would take that money and just go out and spend it. Now, when I reported on this, I said what people are going to do, because I know I'm doing it myself, and I know many other people that are doing this. Either they put more fuel in their car, or they put the same fuel in their car, and they keep the money because they're nervous, they're afraid. They understand that the oil prices will eventually go up. Bank of America's analysts say, thought gas prices would translate into a splurge of spending on non-gas related goods, and instead, when looking at their internal data, are seeing something that is totally the opposite of what is happening. According to the University of Michigan survey, consumers have not been this upbeat since January 2004. Yes, people can be upbeat. People can have hope. And when they ask them the questions, do you believe things will get better? Of course I do. Do you believe your salary will go up? Yes. Do you believe you'll get a better job? You'll get a bonus? Yes, I believe all of that. But then we have reality. And reality is not what you believe. Reality is what's happening right now. And we can see that Wells Fargo is out there saying the same thing. That they thought that consumers would be saving money on the lower gas prices, and they thought this would translate into increased spending. And again, it did not happen. Where are most of the people spending all of their money right now? Obamacare, healthcare. As the premiums continually go up, people are having a very rough time paying for these plans. And of course, as we know, it is the Affordable Care Act, but it's not affordable whatsoever. Next year, these prices are going to go up even higher. And people are going to be paying out through the nose for these. They're not going to get the benefit. But again, the government doesn't care, because guess why? They exempted themselves because they knew This was not good insurance. It was not a benefit for the people. And they decided, you know something? We don't want to touch this at all, and I don't want it. And we see there are more and more people in this country getting laid off. Halliburton to cut about 6,500 jobs. I mean, 6,500 jobs. Think about all the layoffs. Where are these people going to get work? How are they going to make it? Well, I'm going to tell you right now. They'll be saving money and fuel, but they're going to be saving their money because they don't know where the next job's going to come from. They're going to start putting out their resumes. They're going to realize, wait a minute. Every single place is having the same problem, and they're not hiring. And we can see that Rosneft, when speaking about these oil prices being suppressed, they're saying this is being done on purpose by the Middle East countries. And they are doing this because they're putting pressure on Russia. And they say it doesn't even make sense. Right now, OPEC has about 39% share of the global oil market and is formed by a group of countries seeking to dominate the entire market. World oil prices have lost more than 50% since July 2014, with most experts attributing this to oversupply in the market. If there's an oversupply and there's no demand, why are they keeping the output continually ongoing? It makes no sense. OPEC's decision to maintain oil output at 30 million barrels per day deepen the price collapse. They are doing it on purpose. Russia knows it. It's already been proven that Saudi Arabia and the United States were in on this, that they were going to try to destroy the economy of Russia, try to force them into doing things that they want them to do, like completely give back Crimea and stop working or even being involved in Ukraine whatsoever. They want them to stop backing Assad in Syria. And this is how they are doing it. They are putting pressure on Russia to make them do things. Because sanctions, it didn't do anything. Because Russia said, okay, you're going to place sanctions on us. Here's a food ban. How does it feel? You just lost billions upon billions of dollars. In the meantime, Russia is separating themselves from the private Western central banking system by setting up their own payment system where they can process MasterCard and Visa, by having currency swaps which bypass the dollar, setting up a Eurasian Union. They're doing all of this because they understand eventually what these central bankers are going to want is war. Now, when I talk about Russia and China, and I say Russia is doing all this or China is pushing a reserve currency, eventually, over time, and this is coming from our founding fathers, and I forgot which one, and I'll have to look it up. It's either Thomas Jefferson or Ben Franklin, where they said to the United States, to the people, that they've given us this gift, but in time, the central bankers will eventually slither themselves back into the system, take it over, and you will have to fight once again. The same thing's going to happen over time. The only way it's going to work is we continually educate everyone and we stop them from coming in. And this kind of fell apart in 1913 here in the United States. And then it spread across the world. Right now, Putin took over the central bank in Russia. It is still privately owned, but he dictates what goes on in the central bank. And eventually, as time goes on, these systems will also become corrupt. The central bankers, because it's the same group, it's the Rothschilds, all the way down. It is the same group that's been doing this for hundreds and hundreds of years. So when I talk about all this, I'm saying this is what's going on right now, but eventually the whole entire thing will happen once again. And our founding fathers here in the United States knew this. They knew this was going to happen. And they knew that people are going to have to rise up once again. But this time going forward, we need to teach our young and our generations that move forward. That, listen, every time you see this, every time a central banker tries to get in and take away the creation of money and bring it to a private corporation, we need to say no. And of course, hopefully, it will work, but eventually, most likely, they will have to fight for this once again. And here we are, fighting for it once again. Now, China has been making deals all around the world, as we know. China has signed currency swap agreements with 28 countries and regions. China has set up 14 offshore yuan clearing centers at Chinese banks' overseas branches in cities including London, Frankfurt, Seoul, Sydney, and many others. So they are preparing to be the next reserve currency. They're preparing by purchasing gold. Russia is preparing by purchasing gold. And we can see that Russia is continually making deals all across the globe. Egypt has established a free trade zone with Russia. There was more than $4.5 billion of trade between Russia and Egypt in 2014, and more than 80% increase on the year before. Now it will be easier for Egyptian products to reach the markets of Russia, Belarus, Kazakhstan, Armenia. The two countries also agreed to create a Russian industrial zone near the Suez Canal. Russia businesses have stakes in more than 400 Egyptian companies. Russia and Egypt will work jointly on new investment projects, especially in transport, manufacturing, and energy, both oil and nuclear. Russia will help Egypt develop nuclear power plants and train personnel to create a new nuclear power industry in the country. I don't know how the central bankers are going to react to this. We might see another revolution in Egypt. I wouldn't be surprised. Now, as you know, Obamacare is not a friend of the American people. There are no benefit to the people. Basically, it is a huge tax revenue. Companies are taking action and saying, listen, a full work week is about 30 hours. We cannot have people working more than 30 hours, or we're subject to Obamacare. We'll have to, get insurance. We'll have to pay penalties. We'll have to abide by the laws of Obamacare. And we see companies that are actually keeping people under 30 hours per week. And we can see that one of these companies is Staples. Staples is threatening to fire people if they try to work more than 25 hours. And this is from Staples, recent changes have necessitated a strong stance on part-time associates going beyond 25 hours work week. Due to these changes, no part-time associates are scheduled beyond 24 hours. Unfortunately, despite not being scheduled more than 25 hours, several associates still clocked in for more than 25 hours. It is your responsibility to manage your time. So they don't want employees to go over this amount of time because they will get penalized because of Obamacare. And we can see this is why a lot of the major corporations are bringing in the illegals, because they are not covered by Obamacare and they do not have to pay the $3,000 penalty on the illegals coming to work. And we can see right now there are a lot of retail stores that are doing the same thing. They have cut many of the employees' hours, and a lot of them are now working under 30 hours, which hurts the everyday person because now it stops them from earning more money. So this is not helping the situation at all. You can lower the gas prices to 80 cents, but if people are working part-time jobs and they're not bringing in the money, they're not going to be spending. They don't feel secure in this illusion, and they know it's an illusion. And they're nervous and afraid that things are going to get worse, because since 2008, things have gotten worse for a lot of people. Not everyone has felt it, but eventually what happens is that everyone will. I mean, think about it. Back in 2008, a lot of people lost their jobs. A lot of people lost their houses. That was the first wave. Here comes the second one. All those people who think they're secure, that everything is fine. Eventually, what's going to happen when this system collapses? They're going to lose what they worked for, just like everybody else. And they're going to be surprised, shocked. How did this happen? I don't understand. They told us we were in a recovery. But guess what? There is no recovery. It was a lie. And we have to remember, the U.S. government can lie to the people. It can use propaganda. Why? Because Amendment 114, the Smith-Mundt Act of 2012, Section 501, allows the U.S. government to use propaganda and to lie to the people of the United States. And this was an amendment on the NDAA. Now, it seems that the politicians don't want to be responsible for pretty much anything. They love to exempt themselves from everything, like, insider trading, Obamacare, and now we see something else happening. Taking payoffs, breaking the law, and pushing through unconstitutional legislation as special favors to corporate interests has long been par for the course in politics. But now, Representative Kevin Calvey from Oklahoma City wants to make it official and make it illegal to arrest any state officials accused of a public offense. Representative Calvey has introduced House Bill 2206, which would prohibit Oklahoma's district attorneys from prosecuting state officials, granting that power exclusively to the state attorney general. This would exempt lawmakers from prosecution of nearly any crimes that are normally handled at the local level. Oklahoma County District Attorney David Prater explained, this bill creates a different class of citizens that would be protected from the normal prosecution process. They realize what is going on here, and they're trying to pass these bills that they can't be touched. Again, we're coming into a situation where there are two sets of laws. The one set for the government officials and the very, very wealthy. And actually, these government officials usually end up to be the very, very wealthy. They have a different set of laws. The people, the middle class, the poor, have a completely different set of laws and rules. And the same crime could be committed between someone who is in the middle class poor and someone who is a government official, but again, it will not apply to the government official, but it will apply to the middle class and poor, and they will go to jail. So we can see what is happening. We're becoming a two-society country. Those that have different rules and laws. I mean, think about it. Just with Obamacare, why did the government officials exempt themselves? Because it doesn't pertain to them. They have great health insurance. Only the little people will get it. This is good enough for them, and they should be happy. This is the way the system is breaking down at this point. Now, out in Ukraine, we see the Kiev government, the United States government, who pretty much is controlling the whole entire situation in Ukraine. They want Viktor Yanukovych. They want him brought back to Ukraine to stand trial, and it seems like they're doing what they always do. Once they have a regime change, they put in a puppet government. They want the old leader to be put on trial, and then they would like to hang them. We've seen this in Iraq. We saw it in Libya, and we're seeing the same thing happen right now. But Russia is saying, listen, we have no plans to extradite ex-President Viktor Yanukovych because they see political motives behind the criminal case against him. And again, this is part of the agenda to show that this person did commit these crimes, this person did this person did that, and this is why we had the regime change. And this is all part of what they're trying to do here. Now, we understand that the Ukraine government they are losing the war in Ukraine because the people there, the people that they're drafting, they don't want to fight against their fellow citizens. It's very difficult for them. And Poroshenko is saying that, of course, as he's losing and as he's surrounded, that, all right, something? I would accept some type of compromises here because he realizes that he needs to get the troops back and he needs to stop this for a little while to basically retrain, regroup, and then make another offensive. And what he's saying is that he still wants Kiev control of the border between Russia and the rebel-held East Ukraine, which is probably unacceptable to the rebels. He said Kiev might grant border rights on humanitarian, economic, and other issues, but this territory must live under Ukrainian law. So, is that really a compromise? I don't think so. But of course, these are words that he is using, letting everyone know that this is, yes, I would like a compromise, I would like peace. And again, we need to see the actions of these peoples, not the words, because the words are absolutely meaningless without the actions. Russia has proposed to establish a demilitarized zone in the Donbass region in Ukraine. And this is from the latest report of the OSCE, the Special Monitoring Mission to Ukraine. And again, this will probably go nowhere. But again, he's putting these proposals out there and hopefully something might happen. And I'm hoping there will be peace in these areas. I don't want to see war. I don't want this to go into world war. But it seems like the central bankers are not going to let up. No matter how many peace deals are thrown at them, they'll always find a way around it. Even if they accept it, all of a sudden, they will have some type of false flag to say, the ceasefire is off. Look what happened with the Minsk deal. Everything was calm. There was a little bit of skirmishes here and there, and then all of a sudden, a major offensive. Out of nowhere. Well, we knew it was coming. And we see that Putin is urging Kiev to hold direct dialogue with the southeastern people. Kiev will not do it. The conflict in Ukraine can only end if Kiev holds direct talks with representatives of the insurgents in the eastern region, coming from Putin. Russia strongly calls for a comprehensive and exclusively peaceful settlement of the Ukrainian crisis based on the Minsk agreements, which were largely achieved owing to the initiative and efforts of the Russian side. We didn't see the U.S. put out a peace documentation. We didn't see Europe put out a peace documentation. We didn't see NATO put out any type of peace documentation. So when they keep talking about peace, we don't see them having a dialogue with anyone. All we see is, let's pass a bill for war. Let's bring in lethal weapons. Let's send trainers into the country. This is what we are seeing. And Putin is worried that Ukraine is rapidly bringing in more military assets, more military soldiers, advisors, and lethal weapons. I mean, look at what we're seeing right now. They're giving more and more aid to Kiev. When I say they, Europe, United States. The United States passed the Ukrainian Freedom Act, which allows them to give lethal weapons to Ukraine. Now, you wouldn't pass something like this unless you're going to use it, and they knew they were going to use it. Yes, they just can't do it right off the bat. They have to say, we're looking to have peace. Can we have peace here someplace? And their actions are, let's bring lethal weapons in. Now, they've been doing this all throughout the entire battle in Ukraine, but it has been done covertly. Now they want to do it out in the open. That's all that is. And what's very interesting is that after Merkel visited Obama decided to call Putin. Now, like I said, I am waiting for Obama to do the right thing. I'm waiting for him to use his Nobel Peace Prize as a peacemaker to have peace in this area. And I would think someone who won this prestigious award would push peace as hard as he possibly can, would meet with Putin, would meet with these southeastern people, would meet with Poroshenko, and be in there trying to broker peace. Have we seen that? No, we haven't. So, according to the White House, they said Obama urged Putin to seize the opportunity of peace talks between Russia, Ukraine, France, and Germany. Now again, we have to remember, it was France and Germany that went to Moscow, and then Merkel went to the United States. Putin originally put forth this ceasefire plan, which is the Minsk deal. And they were both abiding by the ceasefire. And during this ceasefire, the United States passed the Ukrainian Freedom Act, which allows them to supply Ukraine with lethal weapons and defensive weapons and aid. And they're bringing in U.S. military advisors, trainers into the country. Obama also told Putin, if Russia continues aggressive actions in Ukraine, including sending troops, weapons, and financing support, the cost for Russia will rise. Does that sound like peace to you? Or does that sound like a threat? It sounds like a threat to me. Of course, Russia says we do not have troops in this area, insisting that it is a civil war. Now, of course, as we know, they continually tell us that there are troops inside of Ukraine. They continually tell us that, yes, Russia is in there. And this is all propaganda. Now, it seems like Ukraine and the UK are going to sign a defense cooperation memorandum. So we see the UK is getting involved. The United States is involved. Europe is involved. And everyone is preparing for a major, major conflict with Russia. I mean, this is the way it's all starting to be laid out in front of us. I mean, do you see it any other way? I don't see peace coming out of this. It might be temporary, if anything. But I can see the central bankers will not give up. Just like in Syria back in August of 2013. Everyone keeps telling me, no, Putin wants war. Putin wants war. It would have been so easy to have war with the United States. How many opportunities did Putin have to wage war? He should have let the United States strike into Syria back during that false flag of the chemical weapons attack. Russia could have just been waiting there saying, come on in, I'm ready, let's go for the war. Why didn't that happen? Because Putin again brokered a peace deal. In Ukraine, what is he waiting for? Bring in the jets, bring in the people, push war. It's so easy. The opportunity is there. But guess what? He's continually putting forth peace deals. And it seems like Ukraine, United States, are always rejecting it. Now, John Kerry is out there, and he's talking about the Ukraine situation, and he's saying, and he told lawmakers during a private reception in Germany, that he personally supports sending lethal weapons to Ukraine, even though the President Obama has yet to make a decision. Joe Biden has also said he supports giving lethal aid to Ukraine. Now, of course, these two gentlemen want lethal aid in Ukraine because they have a huge amount of investment in there. You have to remember, Joe Biden's son is on the board of directors. They have investments in the gas pipeline, and John Kerry and his friend from, I think, college also has investments there, and a lot of other government officials who have investments in this area. And we can see that they are pushing to get lethal weapons in this area. Now, of course, Obama's out there saying, and what else are you going to do? Because Angela Merkel visited Obama, and she said, you know, the military conflict is not going to go anywhere if you supply with lethal weapons. And what is he going to say? No, we want lethal weapons? No, he has to make it look like he's looking for a peace deal. But from the conversation that he had with Putin, it doesn't sound like he really wants peace. He's just using this and making it look like he wants peace. And eventually what's going to happen is that he's going to send in lethal weapons one way or another. And this might be done by some type of false flag. A former U.S. ambassador said, certainly everyone is concerned that the Kremlin is making this war in Ukraine increasingly open. They used to hide all their steps, all their aggression. Now it is increasingly clear that Moscow is doing. The U.S. Kiev might be planning some type of false flag event, which will allow Obama to say, see, we need to bring in lethal weapons. How could this be done? Well, as we know, Ukraine and Russia, they fly the same type of jets because Russia actually sold Ukraine the jets. And they could pretty much repaint something and say, Russia has flown in and bombed this area. We've seen it done before. And this would start the war off. And I'm just pointing this out, that this could be a false flag. We also have to remember Ukraine purchased the T-72 tanks from Hungary. They might be repainting that, getting ready to use that as a false flag. And if we added up all the soldiers that they were telling us that was invading Ukraine, that Russia was bringing in, do you know Russia right now would have about 100,000 soldiers in Ukraine? That is very hard to hide with satellites, with people out there with cameras and video. 100,000 soldiers. This is all propaganda to make everyone believe that Russia is invading. We need to look at the actions of our government officials. The actions of Putin show us that he's not just going to go in there. Think about it. If any Russian soldier got caught, it would give the United States, NATO, all the leverage they need to go ahead with this. He knows this. He knows this would be a disaster. And if he really wanted to start war, he would have flown his jets in, he would have marched his armed forces across into Ukraine, and that would have been done. Actually, if he wanted war, he would have done this back in 2013. But we need to look at the actions. The U.S. government has announced that military training will be provided to 600 Ukrainian National Guards in March. The new development was revealed a day after U.S. President Obama announced his support for the diplomatic solution to the conflict in Ukraine. Pentagon spokeswoman Air Force Lieutenant Colonel Vanessa Hillman stated, the plan is going to be executed by sending officers from the 173rd Airborne Brigade combat team in northeast Italy to the turmoil-driven Ukraine. Sounds like peace to me. Now, we understand the United States has sailed a ship into the Black Sea. Russia now is starting massive drills in the Black Sea, the Crimea area, and they are pushing and flexing their muscles right now in this area because they realize the U.S. is bringing in more ships, so Russia is flexing their muscles. We see this done many, many times. The U.S. is looking to put permanent warships in Australia. We're doing a study to see what might be feasible for naval cooperation in and around Australia, which might include basing ships. Right now, it's at the stage of what's the art of the possible? What kind of infrastructure exists? What might it take to do that? What kind of support measures, and how would that fit into the two nations' strategic desires into the future? He added that 50 ships now, 4 deployed in the Pacific, would increase up to 60. So we can see right now the pivot to Asia, the encircling of China is continuous and it's ongoing. We see NATO and the buildup in Eastern Europe is continuous and ongoing. And we see the Middle East right now where everything is completely falling apart and the central bankers, U.S. government, are losing country after country. Yemen right now, they have completely taken over the country. The government has fallen. The U.S. said, well, we are closing the embassy right now. All United States personnel will be out of the country. They're going to ask Turkey and Algeria to look after its interests in Yemen. That country has fallen back to the people. Libya has fallen back to the people. They've lost 2 of the countries already. There's a battle going on in Lebanon. There's a battle going on in Iraq. So all these regime changes are falling apart. And I'm waiting to see when these countries start to sell the oil not using the dollar, and that is coming soon. And this is when the United States central bankers will make their move. They're getting ready right now. The U.S. military is employing Djibouti to expand regional cooperation. Defense Department was planning to increase procurement of supplies from Djibouti for the U.S. military presence. Over the last 3 years, the U.S. military has expanded its presence in Djibouti. More than 1,000 U.S. troops were based there. Now we have to remember, this is a strategic location because it is the choke point, and right across this choke point between the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden is Yemen. So we can see the United States has a base right there, and they like to control the choke point from going from the Gulf of Aden into the Red Sea. Now they lost Yemen, so they lost part of this. And we can see right now they're building up in Djibouti because eventually what they're going to do is make their move to go back into Yemen, to go back into Libya. And we will see this very, very soon. It seems that Jordan has announced it has deployed thousands of ground troops to its border with Iraq as it ramps up a campaign against the Islamic State. So we can see right now the United States government, central bankers, and other nations are ramping up for a major, major offensive, which is coming very, very soon. We have to understand that the United States is bringing in military assets into Kuwait. They're storing them in the depot right there because those will be used very, very shortly for the invasion of Syria and to get into Iraq to push the people back. We see that weapons have already been delivered to Lebanon. John McCain is out there, and he said Americans might be frightened by the prospect of U.S. boots on the ground in Iraq or Syria, but it may be worse otherwise. It's going to scare them one heck of a lot more, or should, when the director of the British intelligence gives us a speech that says there is a direct threat to the United States of America from the Islamic State. So he's calling for boots on the ground, or if you do not put boots on the ground, what is he saying? The Islamic State will attack the United States. He already knows this. They already know what's going to happen because they're going to push the people into doing what they want. Now, the United States plans to establish a military base in Kurdistan. Why would they do this? Because they are getting ready for a major offensive. Obama right now is preparing to send Congress a request for official military force against the Islamic State. And he's pushing this, and he wants this for 3 years, which will give him the authorization to allow to put boots on the ground. Even though he told us there will be no boots on the ground because they're going to go after the Islamic State. Actually, what they're going after is Assad. They're going into Syria. That is what is going on at this point. And we can see all of a sudden, since he's giving this speech to go after the Islamic State, what have we seen? Well, we've seen attacks from the Islamic State. Islamic State is out there saying, we will attack the United States. They're going to the military spouses saying, we know who your husband, we know your children. We hacked into your Twitter accounts, and we know who you are. We see the Islamic State hacking into the Newsweek's Twitter feed. And they compromised it. And they started posting things all over the place. The profile picture associated with Newsweek's official Twitter page was altered to that of a masked man alongside the words Cyber Caliphate. It also said, Bloody Valentine's Day, Michelle Obama. We're watching you. Your girls and your husband. Hashtag Cyber Caliphate. The Islamic State is already here. The Cyber Caliphate got into your PC. We know everything about you and your relatives, and we're much closer than you can even imagine. So he's going to Congress to present why he needs war authorization against the Islamic State, and all of a sudden the Islamic State is cyber attacking. Is that a coincidence? I think not. Now, Obama is also putting together a cyber CIA to fight hackers. I really don't think this is what it's all about. I think it's going to be used to spy on the American people and to have this separate and apart from the NSA, FBI, DHS, which will be an enclosed secret system just like the CIA, and they'll be able to create false flags wherever they need it using the internet. And he's putting it together. It's called the Cyber Threat Intelligence Integration Center. And this will support his bill for cybersecurity. And we can see what they're doing here. They are preparing everything because what they know is that the economy is failing. Everything is collapsing. Greece is looking to leave the Eurozone. The Eurozone is completely falling apart. They're pumping it up the best they can, but they know eventually this is going to come crumbling down. One little thing that goes wrong will bring this entire bubble, and it's just one gigantic bubble, come crashing down. It will pop, and they know this. They even have the Islamic State out there saying that they're trying to obtain chemical weapons. And as we know from DHS, who's trying to get funding from Congress, there are lone wolves, and they are ready to attack. You ever ask yourselves, if they know there's lone wolves, and they know they're ready to attack, where are they? Do they know where they are? So how do they know this? It's actually very confusing. Because they know all this information, they just don't know where they are. Then how do they know this information? It makes no sense. Because what they're feeding us is propaganda. And we know when this false flag hits, it's going to be an inside job. And when I say inside job, it will be our governments. Just like we saw in Canada, Australia, France, UK, Belgium. When they want the people to do something, they have to resort to false flag events to convince everyone that we have an enemy and they're scary and we need to go to war because of this. That's all this is. This is a war of central banks. We have the BRICS against the private Western central bank system. That's it. That's all it is. And they want your daughter, your sister, your brother, your cousin, your husband, your wife. They want you to go off to war for them. And we are not going to do it. The world needs to stand up and say enough is enough is enough. And this is the time we're going to make our move. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.